Hello and welcome back to another breaking news update. My name is Jimmy Boyd and you were watching Boyd News. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I've got some news coming out here for you. We're going to be discussing European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen today in today's video. We're going to be talking about her because she's coming out in a statement recently, as of today, saying that the EU should start preparing for a possible war with Russia. Okay, now this is pretty big news. I know a lot of countries are starting to do that. They're starting to prepare up their defense spending with their countries, and just Europe in general is really starting to ramp up operations to prepare for war. But now we've got the European Commission president coming out and expressing her thoughts, stating that the EU should be getting ready for this. They should start preparing for war and strengthening their defense capabilities. So what she came out and said in a speech was the EU must prepare for possible war and take measures for joint weapons. And she also said whoever speaks and acts like Putin does not want peace, but intends to continue. So she's talking about Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, and saying that, the way he acts and speaks, it clearly appears that he does not want peace, that he wants to continue this war. But just 2 days ago, I believe, we had reports coming out that Vladimir Putin was willing to call for a ceasefire and freeze the war in Ukraine, but he was not willing to give up the territory that they had previously taken. Now, I don't see the West being okay with that. I think this war is most likely going to continue, and most likely as well, the West will probably just ignore this attempt for Russia to try to say, hey, let's call for a ceasefire and a truce and just end this war. I don't think that's going to happen, but we'll have to see how that plays out. But obviously that's some of the things that she's referring to here is that, Putin will come out and say he wants to end the war. But then just a day later, which was yesterday, we had reports that I did of Kharkiv. There was like a hardware store that got bombed. There was like 200 people inside. And I think the death toll is up to like 16 people, 16 casualties already, when yesterday it was at 2 casualties. So, I was mentioning during that video yesterday that we were probably going to see a much higher casualty rate just because of how many people were in that store at the time. So, yeah, I mean, it appears to me at least that Vladimir Putin may come out and state that he wants to end the war, but then his actions may be different. And that's kind of what she's talking about here. So I've got some things we're going to be going over, and let's go ahead and get right into this. I have an article here on DW. Von der Leyen called on the EU to prepare for a possible war. This just coming out today, 9 hours ago, on May 26, 2024. To maintain peace in Europe, it is necessary to invest in defense, said the head of the European Commission. In her opinion, EU budgetary funds should be used for this. That's her right here in the photo, Ursula von der Leyen. Against the backdrop of the ongoing Russian invasion of Ukraine and repeated threats from Russian President Vladimir Putin, the European Union must prepare for a possible war and take measures for joint weapons, says European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Whoever speaks and acts like Putin does not want peace but intends to continue, she said on the German radio station Deutschlandfunk on Sunday, May 26. It says here, von der Leyen, who previously headed the German Ministry of Defense, emphasized the importance of consistent support for Ukraine and at the same time strengthening its own defense capability. If we are to maintain peace on our continent, then we need to invest in defense. So that's starting to really come out from lots of top officials from Europe primarily, not so much the US, but obviously Europe is in line for this war if something were to break out because they're the closest to Russia. And we're starting to see a lot of countries, Poland, the UK, France, lots of countries coming out and saying, hey, we need to start upping our defense. We need to spend more money on defense, more weapons, more bombs, more everything, more tools to defend ourselves if war were to come, but also create it as a deterrent to prevent Russia from making any kind of provocative actions to start a war. It's also for defense as well, or deterrence, I should say. So at the same time, the head of the European Commission, who intends to run for a second term as a candidate of the European People's Party, the EPP, pointed to Russia's hybrid attacks, including the recent removal of border markings on the border with Estonia, the use of migrants as a tool of confrontation with the EU, and attempts to split Europeans using social networks. So I've been hearing a little bit about these things, like this removal of border markings from the border of Estonia. Apparently, the Russians were removing some buoys that were floating in the water, and some water bodies of water that are near Estonia with the border of Russia. And around that time, just a couple days before that, Russia was announcing that they were going to be changing the border of some of these areas, like near Finland, Estonia, Latvia, near the Baltic Sea, basically adjusting their border and making some changes there. So we were hearing reports that they were removing some buoys as well near Estonia. So that could be signs that they're willing to have escalation in that area. And this is a region, the Baltic Sea and the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, has been talked a lot about that Russia may attack some of these countries over here. Okay, and these are NATO nations. So also here, as far as like migrants as a tool, we've been hearing that a lot, especially near Poland. Lots of migrants coming through Belarus, I believe, and trying to enter Poland and many other countries in that area, even the Baltic states that I was mentioning. So it says here, it is important to create jobs in Europe. Speaking about the need to strengthen the defense capabilities of the European Union, von der Leyen also noted the positive effects of this process on the European economy. As an example, she cited the proposal of Poland and Greece to create a joint air defense system. It is important that the billions we invest also create good jobs here in Europe, she explained. According to the head of the European Commission, financing of measures to strengthen defense capabilities should be carried out using budgetary funds coming from contributions from EU member countries. The agreements establishing the European Union provide for a common defense policy, but do not provide for the financing of operational expenditures for military and defense purposes from the EU budget. So what she's talking about here is basically converting many of the EU nations to wartime economies. Okay, and we're really starting to see that. We started to see, we know that Poland for sure, I think Poland's at like 4% of GDP for their spending, their defense spending, which is extremely high. And then even, I think it was the UK. The UK's up to like 2.5%. They could go a lot higher, but they stated that they're starting to move towards a wartime economy, because if you look at Russia, Russia's in full-blown, wartime economy. Obviously, they're at war with Ukraine, but they're spending a lot of their budget, their national budget, on defense spending right now. So these countries that are close to Russia are starting to realize, hey, we need to wake up. We need to start spending money on defense, because all these other countries over here, even China is upping their defense spending. All of their enemies are starting to expand their operations, building more weapons, building tanks, building all these different things in preparation for some type of war. And many nations in Europe are just not prepared for it. So I think what this is starting to do is wake up many of these nations and realize that, hey, we got to start spending more money on defense to not only prepare for a possible war, but maybe to create some sort of deterrence. Because if all these other countries are raising their defense spending and they're building weapons and bombs and you name it, well, then we got to do the same thing. Because then if we look weak, then they could maybe attack us and that could start a war. And then obviously they need to be prepared for a war. So I think that's what the European Commission president is coming out and saying. But this is definitely a narrative that I'm starting to see more of, especially as this war in Ukraine is starting to expand and get more out of control. Like one of the big things that's happening right now is Ukraine is potentially going to be able to start striking targets inside of Russian territory using U.S. supplied weapons. And once that comes, it's going to be game on with this war, and it's going to get really out of control. So I think NATO is starting to get prepared for that and realize that the inevitable conflict with Russia could definitely come if there's no peace that's able to be obtained here in the Ukraine war. So let me know what you think of this down below. That's going to be it for this update. If you got something out of this, please smash that like button. And also, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing down below. Hit the notification bell. That way YouTube can notify you. And with that, I hope you all have a great day. Everybody take care and God bless. And we'll see you in the next one.